So good afternoon, everybody. Good late afternoon. Everybody is either totally disinterested by now or full and wanting to take a nap. So please indulge us. And if you are gonna try and be dozing off, maybe put your mask over your eyes as well, so that we don't feel bad, all right? Is that a deal? Okay, there she is, okay. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Oh, perfect, okay. All right, excellent, so welcome. So today's panel, we are going to basically be talking to a number of development finance institutions in terms of their role in the impact investing space in Nigeria. So since 2015, approximately $5 billion has been invested in the impact investing space in Nigeria. Of that $5 billion, 80% was deployed through development finance institutions. So they have an outsized impact on the space, yet the sectors they focus on, for sectors like energy, and in this case it's on-grid, large-scale energy, manufacturing, ICT, infrastructure, those kinds of sectors are not necessarily the traditional sectors we think of when we're talking about impact investing. They also have very large ticket sizes, which means that the typical kind of social entrepreneur that's looking for capital really doesn't have a way to directly access capital from them. So while they're the largest providers of capital, they invest in sectors and they invest in structures that don't actually necessarily fit with what impact investors are looking for and need. So what we're going to figure out today is how to make that change. And by the end of this panel, I think we'll have it all sorted out. So I'm going to start with a quick introduction of everybody who's on the panel, and then I'll ask them each a quick question, and then we'll go into the more detailed fireside chat. And to be honest, I don't know what the difference between a panel and a fireside chat is, but just imagine there's a fireplace here. Okay, so just imagine there's a fireplace here. And you may not believe this, I grew up in Jos, and in Jos when we grew up, we didn't have air conditioners in our house, we actually had a fireplace. So in the middle of Nigeria, we actually had a fireplace, and it got to almost freezing at night around Christmas. So there are actually places in Nigeria where you could have a fireside chat. So our first panelist is, sorry, what do you call somebody who's part of a fireside chat? A chatter? A fire chatter. Okay, so they're not panelists, we're fire chatters. Okay, so Mrs. Toyin Adeniji is the Executive Director at the Bank of Industry for Micro Enterprise and Small Business. So she's the one of all of the DFIs represented here who is most directly funding the kind of social entrepreneurs that are often at the heart of impact investing. She has 30 years of experience in international development finance and small business development, and prior to the Bank of Industry worked in the IFC and the World Bank for 23 years and was instrumental in the development and growth of IFC's Women in Business program. She has a degree in civil engineering and a Master's of Business Administration, an MBA from Harvard Business School. So I'm a Yale graduate, but I will not hold the HBS degree against you. So Mrs. Adeniji, if you could start very quickly by introducing yourself a little more, tell us something that's not in your profile, and then tell us a little bit about your institution and how they create impact.
Okay, thank you very much, and first of all, thank you to Esmo and the team for putting this together and for setting up this wonderful fireside or whatever panel, and I think it's also very engaging and exciting discussion. But I think you've done a good job in the introduction of me, so I think I'll just want to focus a little bit on the Bank of Industry and how we have forayed in this space of impact investing. Bank of Industry is the foremost development bank in Nigeria amongst several, and we do focus on business financing across the whole area. So yes, we talked about sort of bigger investments in infrastructure, in energy, in manufacturing. The Bank of Industry does tend to go down market, down to the very small micro entrepreneurs that need just sort of micro funding for the growth of their business, or to just be at the just be sort of included in the whole financial space. So the banking industry does a lot of that. We are very invested in impact investing because by what we do, we do a lot of good and we also do well. So in terms of the reduction, we are, being in the development space, we certainly are very focused also more and more on the social side of what we do, and we're very, very sort of cognizant of that. We do borrow from the global financial markets, and these days there is a lot of focus on ESG, so it's triple bottom line, it's environmental, it's social, it's just it's looking at ticking the boxes and all those things that really matter. And so we have, I'm sure by the time we go into the discussion, we'll talk a little bit more about specific things we have done in the space of impact investing. But it is something we take quite seriously. It's something that we are very, very focused on. And I look forward to sharing some specific things that we are doing and also our outlook in this space.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll come back to you with more detailed questions shortly, but I'm going to introduce the other panelists. So the next panelist I'm going to introduce is Kalim Shah. He is the Senior Country Manager for the International Finance Corporation. So I'm not sure whether it's you or Banji who have the bigger checkbook, but anyway, he has a very big checkbook. He joined the IFC in 1998 after a career in commercial banking in both Canada, I'm also a Canadian citizen, so we have that in common, and Trinidad, where he's from, and my wife is Trinidadian, so we have the double connection. So he's probably my in-law. Trinidad is a very small country, so he's probably related to my wife in some way. Before becoming the IFC country director for Nigeria, he was the chief investment officer in the Manufacturing, Agribusiness, and Services Department for Africa. So he had a very broad geographic role across multiple sectors. Now he has a very focused geographic role. And so Khalim, maybe you can also then tell us a little bit, something about you that's not in your profile, and then the same thing, how does the IFC create impact?
Thanks very much. That was a pretty comprehensive profile, so nothing as well to add. In terms of IFC creating impact, I mean, as you rightly point out, IFC is the largest international development financial institution globally. Last year, we did roughly $50 billion of investments globally. That includes for our own book, plus the mobilization that we did. And we would like to think, and we can discuss this future, that all of it is impact investing. Right? We have a certain methodology, which I can again talk about in the future, where we gauge the impact of each investment that we do, and the impact across multiple lines. Let's put it that way, and then we rank that, right? And that also helps screen which investments we do and which investments we don't do. So I'll stop there for the time.
All right, thank you very much. So now we're coming to Banji Fehintola, the Senior Director and Head Treasury and Financial Institutions at the Africa Finance Corporation. So he is responsible for managing the corporation's balance sheet with total assets of around 8.7 billion. And I actually remember not that long ago, AFC had a balance sheet of $1 billion. So you guys have done incredibly well as Africa's, sort of one of Africa's leading DFIs. So I think we should give them a round of applause. That's incredible. And you look like an $8 billion man, so this is good. So, and before the before the AFC, he worked at Citibank and Arthur Andersen and is a chartered accountant. So again, if you, just like the others, if you can tell us one or two things about yourself that's not in your profile, and then how does the AFC create impact?
All right. So first, I grew up in Jos.
See how comfy he looks. When you have $8 billion, this is how you look. I love this.
I grew up in Jos, like you, so I'm sure many people don't know that. I schooled in Jos, lived in Jos, grandparents lived and died in Jos.
Canadian Hausa?
So say.
So we maganan Hausa mana.
Okay. So I worked at Citi, like you mentioned, and I joined AFC in 2008, actually. So that was shortly after AFC was created. AFC used to be my client when I was at Citi, and I joined them in January 2008. So I definitely have a lot of institutional memory on the organization. The organization, rightly, like you said, started as a $1 billion organization at the time, and it's roughly about $8.5 billion now, having grown multiple-fold. Like IFC, I mean, I think everything we do is impact related. We will talk about specific things we've done, but obviously when we're looking at transactions, you know, every single transaction we're looking at has to have a very strong developmental impact. So triple bottom line, environmental, social, governance, you know, that whole sustainability thing is in our investment framework, right from how we fund ourselves to how we deploy capital. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I think this is a very good discussion coming right after COP26, and the fact that this is what the world is talking about now. So thank you so much to the organizers for putting this together.
All right, thank you very much. So, and last but not least, we have Amarakoon Bandara, who's the economic advisor and the head of strategic policy and inclusive growth and the head of the strategic policy and inclusive growth unit. You must have a really big business card to fit that title. So Amarakoon is from Sri Lanka. I have no in-laws in Sri Lanka. I have friends from Sri Lanka, but I don't have any in-laws there. So, but good to have you on the panel. He's previously worked in the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. He worked at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, and he served in the UNDP in Zimbabwe, Mauritius, Seychelles, and Tanzania. Seychelles, that must have been a tough assignment. So in addition, so just like the others, if you could say one or two things about yourself and then also about how the UNDP creates impact.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here and also partner with IIF and NAB in this initiative. I think you have already mentioned a lot about me, so I don't know whether it is, well, I'm the senior economic advisor, and my main task is to provide policy advisory and technical support to the federal as well as the state governments to bring in development solutions to the challenges they are facing, especially looking from sustainable development angle. UNDP is the development arm of the United Nations system. Since the introduction of SDGs, it is also the integrator of SDGs, looking from all economic, social, as well as environmental angles, try to bring in all the relevant stakeholders to the fore, because we feel doing alone may not be effective. But in terms of creating impact, it is basically driven by three strategic directions of change. One is resilience building, especially building resilience of the people, the societies, as well as the states and the federal government in response to the shocks. One latest one is, of course, the COVID-19. I'm sure you have seen some of the initiatives the UNDP undertook, especially at the very beginning of the pandemic, immediately bringing $2 million worth of PPEs from China. And second one is structural transformation, looking from both the inclusiveness as well as innovation. And the third one is a very important aspect of the SDGs, leaving no one behind, especially through a rights-based approach to empower people. We do these through something called 6 signature solutions at the global level, running from, say, poverty and inequality, governance, gender, climate, environment, and all these things that are part and parcel of the overall sustainability agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're going to move to, I guess, the sort of fireside chat format. So I'm going to talk to each fireside chat member, a couple of questions in a row. So other panelists, please don't feel left out. So I'm going to start with Toyin. And I hope that you're able to follow us okay. I know it's very difficult when everyone else is in the room and then you're not there. So I hope that you can hear everything and participate fully. So my first question is basically about, in the last couple of years, the Bank of Industry made a pivot towards a more commercially driven approach to lending. And this was in response to the bank having their sort of loans at risk was getting higher, and so there was this need to pivot. But how has this affected the bank's commercial performance? And then on the flip side, has it had an impact in terms of the kind of social impact the bank is able to still create in spite of this more commercial approach?
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just go straight into that question. And I can hear everybody. I'm not there, but I feel like I'm there, so that's good. In the last few years, when we say that we've as a bank, adopted a commercial approach, well, that's not like a yes and a no, and there's a reason for that look and feel. I think the first thing is that the Bank of Industry, like my other fellow panelists have said, we're in the space of impact investing and impact. Our work is all about impact. And so I think the overarching thing is that we do good and we also do well while doing good. And so that can be spun in different ways. In terms of the pivot, it wasn't actually a pivot. What has happened that is not sort of known or publicly known is that the Bank of Industry actually does get its funding mostly from syndicated, from commercial sources. So we are in the global markets. We have a lot of syndicated facilities, and so we do borrow money to earn them for our business. And because of that, that's what gives us that commercial feel. But that said, we still sort of have a blend of funding, because of course we also are in a lot of cases executing agencies for government intervention programs, and we are also, we are a government agency, and so therefore we are able to bring a blend into our portfolio. So ours is a case of, that's where the commercial sort of lens come into play. But one of the things that we also have to do is we also have to make interventions be on the back of sustainability. And so we have to make sure that even though we are development focused, even though we are looking at the priority sectors that we need to focus on to have an impact on social issues that are identified, sectors of our priority sectors. We also have to make sure that we are sustainable and we are creating sustainable impact to our beneficiaries. So in that light, we do look at our portfolio from a very from a lens where we consider various things. But I said during the introduction, one of the things that we have done at the Bank of Industry is that our focus has also been to go downstream. And so when we talk about what kind of impacts do we have, I think there are a few that sort of resonate very loudly. And I'd like to talk about inclusion, because we do go right to the bottom of the pyramid, we go right to the trenches, and we are all over the country. Financial inclusion is something that we do take very, very important, and it is something that we also touch upon just by the nature of the kind of work that we do. So we are very keen on financial inclusion. We are also very keen on being in every nook and corner of Nigeria. So we work with all local government areas. Bank of Industry has more than 26, I think I'm still counting, branches or offices all across Nigeria. And so we do have troops that are able to go right into the market. one of the things that we've also done very well is we have also developed an agency that we use to reach our market. So by way, either by way of interventions that we have done in the past, more recently the government enterprise and empowerment program, where we were able to reach more than 7.5 million people on our database, and also able to reach more than 2.5 people with financial products that are as little as 10,000 naira, and in all across Nigeria. So by virtue of that, we have a very a very sort of a platform, which is called the Growth Platform, which is able to reach really all across Nigeria in the fastest possible time. And so, by way of impact, this is the business that we do. And I talk a lot about inclusion. I talk a lot about going to the local government areas. I also talk about vulnerability. We do have these special programs that we have done in the North East as well. And this is an area that's very difficult to reach, but we have been able to work through our agents, through local knowledge, and through the right kind of products, have a reach at this very level. So we do have a fund that is earmarked just for the North East, we call it the North East Rehabilitation Fund. We also work with smallholder farmers, starting, we have partners that we work that aggregate smallholders and are able to reach them also with financial instruments and financial empowerment that help them sort of do their work. And of course, this has an impact on their livelihoods and on their community as well. So just to sort of pull that together, yes, there's something that looks like a commercial sort of look and feel to the work that BOI does. That is true because of the way we are funding, but even in design and product, we do take into cognizance the people that we're trying to reach, and we are able to use a blend of funding to reach these people in a sustainable manner, and able to tick up on all the boxes that we need to ensure that we are not, we're not too commercially driven, that we do not keep an eye on the social, the social KPIs that we have to also look up for.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. So to follow that, I wanted to just ask a little bit about the whole kind of Nigerian DFI ecosystem. So in addition to BOI, there's the Development Bank of Nigeria, there's NIRSAL, there's the Bank of Agriculture, and so on. So I guess the question is there some kind of coordinating mechanism that all of you sort of work together and kind of set priorities together so that you're not sort of falling over each other, but instead kind of, the whole is greater than the parts? And then is there a feeling that, all of these development finance institutions in Nigeria are creating the impact that they were intended for? And if so, why or why not?
Okay, yes, you're right. There are several development agencies in the country. And I think just to cut the chase, there's room for more collaboration. I think certainly by even just by the names of the different institutions, I think you can tell what their focus is or meant to be. So you have the Bank of Agriculture, which is focused on agriculture. You have EBN, which is a bit more wholesale. I guess meant to focus on wholesale banking. You have NIRSAL, which do insurance products for agriculture. You have NIDA, who work in the technology space. There are quite a few of them. There is certainly more room for collaboration. There is certainly more room for us to come together and understand really what each of us can bring to the table. Unfortunately, sometimes we do follow or sort of cross wires. We do cross wires sometimes, and there are times when we've had to, at the bank, we've had to sort of, ask or refer inquiries to another agency just so that we don't sort of end up going into some sort of battle. But is there more that can be done? I think yes. I think the ecosystem is still struggling in some ways. I think we need to, and the discussions are ongoing. So I'm not trying to sort of bash ourselves or bash anyone or point any fingers. So it's an ongoing discussion. There's room for improvement. Certainly the ecosystem can be strengthened. I think certainly the steps that we need to take can be shared with more clarity. I think policy, consistency is also very, very much required. I think this is also a sector that is voiceless, and so I think with very exciting discussions like this and bringing the conversation to the table, I think where we can bring a voice to these people, that has to be done. And it's not enough to just sort of have this kind of discussion and then go away and sort of just put a nice discussion, but being able to move and turn these discussions into actionable steps, actionable goals, and bring all the different parties to the table. Certainly more of that has to be done. And so, we're all sort of having impact. Yes, we are within the ecosystem that we have right now. It's not an easy one, especially at the inclusion level. It's not an easy one where we have a group of people or a sector that are voiceless or quite silent, and we have to sort of be the voice to these people. And again, unfortunately, we never actually bring them to the table. I mean, when I was at the bank, I know we used to have panels where we would actually bring the beneficiaries to panels like this and make sure that we actually hear them in this kind of setting. So not just sort of talk about them, but actually be able to treat people and say, you speak, let the people hear you, let the people know what your pains are, let the people know what you feel, because they do actually have a voice. You don't always have to be there, but that's what really tends to happen. So I think in terms of can we do more, are we doing enough? There's room for improvement, and I think certainly it can only get better. And I think this is what these kind of discussions are all about: bringing the voice of the people of the sector that we're talking about to the table, and not always just be the ones sort of trying to construct what the real issues are.
All right, and then one final question, and this is basically to understand how the Bank of Industry kind of prioritizes what sectors they want to focus on. Is it, the board and management of the bank that you just say, look, we see in the market, this is a particular sector of interest that we should focus on, or is it based more on federal government policy, or is it based on, investors and development partners? Where does the prioritization come from?
You answered the question actually, so I don't really have to say much. So the Bank of Industry is structured along three main lines. They're structured along what we call large enterprise. We have the SME directorate, and then also the micro enterprise, and which all have sort of like a very thin line in between the different groups. And also, as I said, the Bank of Industry is also a government agency, and therefore our priorities are aligned with the government in terms of private sectors, in terms of what's important. Sometimes it changes, and sometimes we sort of move between, we adapt to whatever the changes are. But the Bank of Industry also works like any institution. It has a 5-year strategy plan, which also adapts when it has to adapt. And so by this, we do evolve what our priority sectors are. But because of the way we're formed, we are in every sector. We're kind of like an all over the place institution, where we draw our focus or we converge our focus by being able to go spill into these three pillars. And so therefore we're able to reach the different sectors. Another thing is also because of the depth of need in Nigeria for impact, because of the depth of need in whatever sector we look at. I don't know, I was having a discussion with someone, they said, Nigeria is the kind of place where if you close your eyes and just point at any sector, there is going to be a need, and there is going to be impact needed in that space. So if you close your eyes, touch anything, touch any space, touch any sector, there will be a need. And so by way of that, I may also say every sector is priority in Nigeria, and the Bank of Industry is structured in such a way that it can reach all those different spaces.
Okay, thank you very much. So now let me move. So we started with a country, with a Nigeria country level DFI. So let's move to the continental DFI, to the Africa Finance Corporation. So Banji, by the way, what secondary school did you go to?
Baptist.
You went to Baptist?
Yep.
Oh, okay, all right. What year?
Come on.
I just want to know if we competed in anything.
You want to start dating.
All right, we'll talk about it after. All right. So as a public-private blended DFI, I mean, AFC is unique in that it's not just public capital, there's also private investors in AFC. The AFC likely has a higher return expectation than a typical DFI. So how does this affect the kind of deals you do, and does this make it difficult to operate as an impact investor?
Okay, so just to maybe give a bit of context for people who are coming across AFC for the first time. So we are a public-private partnership, so we're modeled after the IFC, obviously, in terms of the way we approach the market. We have countries that signed up to an international treaty. Just yesterday, the government of Niger became the 33rd African country to sign up to AFC treaty. And thank you. And we also do have private sector shareholders. So it's a PPP, the private sector and the public sector coming together to do development and impact. So that's really the vision of AFC when we're created. We invest across the continent of Africa. We've deployed, proudly so, getting close to $10 billion in 35 African countries from inception till date. And that's sizable, when you start thinking about the cycles that we've gone through the pandemic, we've gone through the global financial crisis, all times when capital leaves the continent, we've been there providing counter-cyclical support to, all the industries on the continent. So I think that's quite important. We're quite focused on 5, give or take 6 sectors: natural resources, power, transport, telecoms, and obviously technology is becoming a part of our telecoms business these days, transport infrastructure, and more recently, we're looking at financial institutions as a way to go downstream. I mean, I'm proud to be one of the supporters of BOI, as well as other financial institutions across the continent. Our business model, bear in mind, I said we're public, private, therefore implies that we take a slightly different view of projects. And our belief is that for projects to be sustainable in the long run, you need commercial viability. We don't go into projects depending on government, subsidy, support. Those are not the types of projects that AFC would do. So we look at projects based on the cash flows, the strength of the project, and if the project can stand on its own, then we're very happy to put capital behind that project. On the back of what we do, we have a very strong credit rating. I mean, AFC is the second highest rated entity in Africa, behind the African Development Bank. So we have an A3 rating from Moody's. And the implication of that is that we're able to mobilize capital relatively cheaper. So even though we have this commercial view of projects, the fact that we can raise global capital at relatively cheaper pricing, I mean, we're able to pass that benefit on to, our projects as well as the investing companies that we put our capital in. So broadly speaking, if you sat in our investment committee, what are the things you look for? First, commercial viability of the project is extremely important. Secondly, we also, of course, actually not in any order of ranking, you also have to prove the developmental impact of that project, along all the major chains: environment, social, governance, etc. So those are the ways we look at projects. If you pass through all that screening, then, and you obviously fall into one of our sectors, then AFC will be very happy to look at the project. We're slightly wholesale in terms of scale and size. We're not everywhere, like BOI, for example, so ticket sizes tend to be slightly higher when you are talking to AFC. But our product suite is comprehensive, from advisory to project development. We do senior debt all the way to equity investment in projects. So I think that's the value we bring, and there are lots of projects we've been involved in on the continent that showcase a lot of impact from our activities.
All right, thanks. So next question then, just to follow that up, is that in recent